What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part, did not look, we're in the 60s, part 60-something of me ranking and reviewing Frank Zappa's guitar solos within the context of an album. Part 64, and today's album is Road Tapes Venue 3. The third, and unfortunately what looks to be the last of a series of releases in which complete shows were released, or in this case, two complete shows, the early and late show from July 5th, 1970. This came out back in 2016. Probably the lesser of the three releases. It is mid-period Flow and Eddie. It's got a very mid-period Flow and Eddie set list, track list. But I'm going to talk about the solos, rank them according to just this album, and then I'll show how this album compares to the other 63. This is the show, or this is the source material for the Nancy and Mary music off Chunga's Revenge. That's part of a King Kong and the Clap. Chunga's Revenge, King Kong and Chunga's Revenge parts are from that, I think, from both those songs. As far as the solos on this one, I don't think it's the main attraction, which is a weird thing to say for a Flo and Eddie album. As far as Flo and Eddie, the main attraction, there's some really good music on here and some good jams, some interesting stuff, but I can't say any of the guitar solos are going to win a guitar solo contest. I think this is more of Frank in sort of like this weird middle phase. Like, it's weird because you have the Hot Rat sessions where he was dropping some pretty epic guitar solos. And then come this tour, 1970 in general, his stuff, it's like he's looking, maybe he's just searching for a new voice or a new way to express himself, or I don't know. But I think the most interesting thing about these solos is if you're already a Zappa fan and you want to just sort of track the evolution of where he's going. It's a handful of solos. There's 11 total. There's a handful of solos that are just really doing a good job at servicing whatever song they're in. And then there's a couple songs where he has those moments where like guitar solo features, and they're more interesting than I think like hit it out of the ballpark type experiences. Yeah. So anyways, there's 11. Let's go through them. Number 11, and then I will talk through them, and at the end I'll put the list on the screen. Number 11 and number 10 are both Charlena's, just little ending solos at the end of the Charlena's. Number 1 and number 2, they're probably the same. They're just raving up the ending, like, you know, a nice rock and roll finish. Number 9, You Didn't Try to Call Me. Another one that is some like ending a type song type thing. Really short, not too long, but really tasty for that short little period. Like, you're not getting a big dose, but the dose you get is pretty satisfying. Number 9, You Didn't Try to Call Me. Number 8 is Wonderful Wino. There's some really nice guitar throughout this entire song, but it's just, I don't know. Like, it's patient, it's energetic, but it just, you can see Frank's trying to develop ideas. He's trying to go places with it, but it's good. It's just like, you know, Frank would be doing better, but it's a very rock and roll servicing Wonderful Wino. At the end of the song, he's dropping in some licks that are pretty tasty. It's not bad, but I think it just really works within the context of what is kind of one of the more rock and roll songs in this set list. Number 7 is the Call Any Vegetable from the first show. The second show is a keyboard solo and a saxophone solo. This is, the beginning of this is different than it would be by 71, where when they go into the solo section, the band completely drops out and Frank just kind of goes at it alone for about 30 seconds before the rhythm section comes back in. It's a really nice setup for the song. It gets kind of psyche and weirdy towards the end, and Frank starts doing some like really psych runs, really kind of a lot of energy, but it's not very tightly wound. It's just kind of slightly just an attack of guitar noise, an attack of the band. Again, it's one of those, I don't think it's a bad solo by any stretch, but in the evolution of Call Any Vegetables just over the course of like 70 and 71, it's probably one of the lesser, less satisfying ones, but it's still doing a good job. Number 5 and number 6 are the two solos from King Kong / Igor's Boogie. The first solo being number 5, the second solo being number 6. And yeah, the first solo has a really nice sort of melodic opening to it. I don't know if it's a pre-written thing or Frank is like maybe testing out some like melodic lines that he had written that maybe he wants to see how they fly, but it feels almost sleeping in a jar-esque, but it just feels familiar, but not like maybe Frank is just improvising this melody off the top of his head. We get some weird, like the longer he goes, it seems like there's a couple moments where he hits the wrong note, or he's just like trying something and it doesn't work out, and it's almost like, whoa, I'm here, I might as well just stay with this idea for 20 seconds and make it feel purposeful. Or I don't know, it's kind of a sloppy solo, but at the same time it's sloppy in that it's taking chances. It's just, I don't think all those chances are necessarily working. And then it just kind of finally just kind of dies out at the end. But it's a nice, pretty long, healthy solo. Frank's exploring ideas. He's starting to really stretch out in a live context. That's the first one, which was number 5. Second one, which was number 6. I don't even know if I wrote notes on that one. Yeah, it's just a little shorter of a little solo. I think there's like a drum solo and then Frank comes back again. Not right. Oh, I did write out that. It's a lot more aggressive than the first one, more rock and more high energy. But it's just kind of shorter. Doesn't quite stretch out as much as the first one does. But it's got really good energy coming in like the middle of what is a pretty long King Kong Igor's Boogie. Number 4 is Pound for a Brown on the Bus. Kind of a dramatic, well-paced, kind of nicely spaced out Pound for a Brown as Pound for a Browns kind of tend to be. Yeah, it's a pretty nice solo, actually. Kind of really well developed. It's one of those, it feels more like a Frank statement solo. Yeah, again, not one of the greatest things in the world, but I think a really solid 1970 Frank Zappa solo. Number 3 is the Orange County Lumber Truck, which is awesome, has this absolutely amazing. Why is this so low? These next 4, including Pound for a Brown on the Bus, we're all pretty tight. I think there's a pretty big jump from like King Kong Igor's Boogie to Pound for a Brown at number 4. This one, from the beginning, as soon as we're in this, it's like engaging immediately. Frank's in the pocket. He's got an idea that we're working with. Kind of nice and psyche for a while, kind of snaky little vibes. It's a little too short. Could probably go on longer, but it's pretty tasty and pretty satisfying. And from the beginning, Frank, this is towards the end of the show, the end of the second show. So Frank does seem like he's maybe got a little more like he's warmed up and ready to go type thing. Number 2, also from the second show, Return of the Hunchback Duke. This is essentially the Holiday in Berlin solo in which he comes out and like messes around with the Inca Road lines that would come at the end of the Inca Road solo, the ba-na-na-na-na, and then he uses that as sort of the springboard into an actual solo. Once he kind of finishes messing around with the theme, there is this awesome sort of descending run that he does before we engage with the solo proper. That is pretty cool. But almost the entire thing has a really strong Inca vibe, and that I think is one of his best solo vamps. So this is a pretty successful solo. I think there are better Dukes from this era, but it's still pretty good, and you can't go wrong with that Inca vibe. And then number 1, which is almost always the case in this first half of the 70s when this thing pops up on a set list, is Chunga's Revenge, which I believe is labeled The Clap, is being called The Clap at this point. But it's a straight, kind of slower, your more intense 70s swagger. It's got that Chunga energy. It is kind of all over the place in a way where Frank's like, it's the end of the show and I'm just going to do a whole bunch of different things. But it kind of works. We slow down into like this slower, kind of groovier type slow swagger. Yeah, about over halfway in. It's about 3.5, just short of 4 minutes long. It's definitely not a very focused and reined in and like sort of a 79 Inca Roads where we're just kind of riding this building wave. It's like 3.5 minutes of Frank just kind of attacking all over the place, and the rhythm section kind of maintaining some semblance of like not lack of chaos or like control. But it's interesting. Like, I can't say it's like one of those solos that has convinced you to be a Frank Zappa fan as far as the guitar solos go. But as someone who really likes his solos, it's one of those, like, I'm like, okay, I see how you're trying to explore. I see where you're going. You're not quite where you would be in a couple years, but yeah. It's, I think, the best, most interesting thing on here, and maybe the best thing on here is the return of the Hunchback Duke. But I think Chunga's Revenge is maybe a little more interesting. But yeah, that's what they look like in writing. Number 10, see, Charlene is 1 and 2. Should be 10 and 11, but it's not. But yeah, that's what I got for the rankings. And where would I put this album among all the others I've already done based on guitar solos only? It is all the way down at number 54, right above the Grand Wazoo, but below Zappa 88. Zappa 88 has that City of Tiny Lights on there, which is just really, really good. That's a great solo. And I don't think Road Tapes Venue 3 has anything to compare to just that one single solo. So that's gonna elevate Zappa 88 to 53. Knock this to 54. Plus, it's a Flo and Eddie release. This is an interesting release. I think it was released because there's some good moments on here, but I think the reason it was mainly released is because they had the tapes. Frank had used them for Chunga's Revenge. It was like, hey, we got them, let's release them. But yeah. All right, anyways. I have more thoughts on that elsewhere if you want to more on this, whatever, about that album. Road Tapes, Venue 3. Yeah, that's it. I'm done. Let me know your thoughts on these solos or this era or Flo and Eddie, whatever. Subscribe, like, share, comment, do all those things. And go listen to this. It's Flo and Eddie from 1970, 2 shows. It's an interesting listen. It's kind of fun at times. All right, that's all I got. Peace. Talk to you later.